Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Webster Tarpley here in Washington, D.C. Now, just parenthetically, you always want to keep up with Tarpley.net, Tarpley.net. You always want to keep up with Twitter feed, Webster G. Tarpley, Twitter feed, Webster G. Tarpley. Right now, there's a special place we need to send you, which is to progressivepress.com, and I will put up a link from Tarpley.net to this particular listing. Progressivepress.com, my publisher, very fine operation out in California, is taken the lead in exposing the extraordinary degree to which the Anglo-American ruling elite, the people who today want to give the world lessons in democracy and human rights, that they were pro-Nazi and pro-fascist during the 1930s and the 1940s. And since the actual centers of Nazism and fascism were militarily defeated, overrun, and somewhat broken up, although not completely, the spirit of Nazism, in particular, really, you can make an argument, has lived on, say, through people like John Foster Dulles, Allen Dulles, Prescott Bush, the people who were supporting Hitler in the 30s and 40s, and who came out of it untouched, indeed, with their power magnified. That's Washington. That's London. Look at Lady Astor. Look at the Cagu Lords, as they were called, right? The fascist members of the House of Lords. Astor, Lothian, Brand, Halifax, the British ambassador to Washington on December 7th, 1941, was a dyed-in-the-wool pro-fascist, Lord Halifax, who had been a great friend of Ribbentrop when he was in London. So don't expect him to give you any warning about the Japanese coming. No, he's not going to give it to you. There's one crazy book that says Halifax warned Roosevelt 48 hours before the attack. No, he did not. He was a fascist sympathizer. So Progressive Press has published a number of books about that, and I'm glad to say that I have got now this new book coming in the springtime, spring 2012, delivery. The Real Pearl Harbor Conspiracies is at least the working title. Title may change, but you put in your pre-order now, you'll get it as soon as it comes out. And he has John Leonard has various ways in which it's offered to you. So please go to progressivepress.com, go to the Coming Soon tab, look for the Real Pearl Harbor Conspiracy. People often ask, what can they do to support my work? I am just a small operation here. I am not a foundation-funded operation, anything but. So if you want to support me, the best way to do it is buy and read my books. You can see them listed in a column on the right-hand side of Tarpley.net. There's now this new one, The Real Pearl Harbor Conspiracy. I've talked about this this past week on Alex Jones, Rents. I've been on Tom Colley's INN World Report twice. I've been on Kevin Barrett's Truth Jihad Radio for 2 hours, an in-depth presentation of this. Many of those are linked on the broadcast. And while I'm talking about broadcasts, for those of you in Italy, you should tune in on Sunday to Radio Città Aperta in Rome. I'm not sure of the time, but the program, it's an organization, it's a pro-Palestinian humanitarian organization that has a program on there. And they have interviewed me actually this morning about Syria. So if you want to hear the whole spiel about Syria in Italian, please do go there. And we've also had a very interesting dispatch, a summary of what I found in Syria, put out by Stefania Limiti on the Near East News Agency, NENA, I believe it is. All right, so we'll have more about this. The Russian situation. It was a parliamentary election, and the leading candidate, the Spitzenkandidat, or whatever you call it, Capolista, in the United Russia list was who? Medvedev. Medvedev's name, Medvedev's mug, were at the top of the list. Was Putin on the list? Was he running for something? No. Putin was not on the ballot. Now, if you look at elections anywhere in the world, for example, in 2010, some of these same clowns were saying, oh, well, the Democrats lost big, but that doesn't hurt Obama because his name was not on the ballot. All right, fine. Today, Putin's name is not on the ballot. This is absolute baloney. The vote that has occurred is a vote of no confidence in the weak, vacillating, half-hearted, gullible appeasement line of Medvedev. And I'm very sorry about this, but that's the way it is. This kind of weakness is intolerable. The tragedy of Libya could not have occurred without the collusion of Medvedev, as Russian Ambassador Chamov, a man after my own heart, said. Right? This was essentially a betrayal of fundamental Russian interest. You remember that Medvedev even said Russia could send peacekeeping forces to join with the imperialists. Well, the Russian voter looked at Medvedev, and they saw what? Hamburger diplomacy with Obama. Somewhat toxic, I'm afraid. They saw Medvedev's fawning visit to Silicon Valley, as if Silicon Valley were the model for the future of the world. Medvedev, half of those companies are bankrupt. Half of them have been bailed out. This built on monopoly practices. Bill Gates is a monopolist. He's a conspiracy in restraint of trade. The late Steve Jobs, I'm sorry, normally de mortuis nihil nisi bonum, but Steve Jobs was a monopolist. He was an exploiter. He was somebody who sent jobs overseas. He attacked and asset-stripped other companies, right? The whole John D. Rockefeller catalog of abuses that were carried out by these people. But Medvedev insisted on posing that Silicon Valley is a model for the modernization of Russia. I'm sorry. So the voters, the Russian voters, and we have to applaud the good sense of the Russian people, essentially delivered their view on what Medvedev had done, from Libya to hamburgers to Silicon Valley to the rest of it, right? And now Medvedev is still saying, he said all claims about vote irregularity should be thoroughly investigated. I'm sorry, that's a weak, cringing, uncertain trumpet that cannot be the voice of Russia. Better to hear Putin saying that the interference by the United States in the internal affairs of the Russian Federation is intolerable. It is unacceptable. And above all, I have to apologize to the people of Russia for the crude arrogance, the unbelievably primitive behavior of Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton daring to say that the Russian elections were not free and fair. Based on what? Based on what? From your reports from your CIA agents? Are they giving you good? Are these the same CIA agents who told you about the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, or are they different? Are they the same ones that feed you what you want to hear? Putin is right. Hillary gave the signal. Hillary is fomenting upsurges. She's trying to, anyway. She's not really doing it. She's trying to foment riots in central Moscow. That is the danger for today, that is tomorrow, Saturday, the 10th of December. Back in a minute. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Webster Tarpley here in Washington, D.C. Keep up with everything at Tarpley.net, Tarpley.net, Webster G. Tarpley Twitter feed. So the Russian election results, nothing out of the ordinary, but whatever it is, this is a loss due to Medvedev's failed leadership. The story with Putin is yet to be told, right? There'll be a presidential election in March, even though the Anglo-Americans are attempting to run their destabilization now. So, as Putin correctly pointed out, this is completely unacceptable, intolerable, and I would say adventurous, provocative, and really crazy interference by the U.S. in Russian internal affairs. And it's also, the other thing about it is pathetic. It's weak. How many goons can the U.S., can the CIA mobilize in the Tverskaya, right? They want to say, the new Tahrir is the Tverskaya square there in Moscow. How many CIA goons can they put out there? And actually, they won't come with sweatshirts saying CIA. It will say, for example, the international brigades of the ad busters, right? Unemployed youth. I'm sure they've been shipped in from Western Europe, right? From the Transcaucasus, from the Baltics, any kind of goons they can get in there, including, soccer hooligans, on leave from their soccer teams and so forth. We're told there were demonstrations in Moscow. Wow, how many? 5,000, 10,000, 15,000. The boast today on National Pentagon Radio is it's going to be 35,000 will be demonstrating in Moscow. Now, I've been in peace demonstrations here in Washington with 50,000, easily 100,000, that had absolutely no effect on the policies, let's say, of the Mad Dog Bush Jr. administration. So we're told now, though, that the voice of the people is this very, very select group, right, in this huge country with 150 or 160 million people, whatever it is. We've got 35,000 soccer hooligans in Moscow, and that means somehow the government is not legitimate. We've also got Fox News showing you a demonstration that actually took place in Greece, where you can see the sign that says Greek National Bank written in the Greek alphabet. The Fox News assumes that their viewers are so ignorant that they can't tell the difference between Cyrillic and Greek. The other thing is, what is the CIA line? It's basically two things that are more or less contradictory. One is there was a tremendous vote-stealing exercise, right? The ballot boxes were all stuffed. These elections are invalid. And at the same time, look at the tremendous losses of the United Russia. So, dear friends, which is it? Is it vote stealing, vote fraud, or is it the losses that United Russia was able to do? And then they try to bridge this. They say, well, look at the losses they had. If they hadn't done vote fraud, then it would be even worse. This is interference, and we have this group called GOLOS. I called your attention to this last week. The GOLOS is a case study of National Endowment for Democracy, NED, CIA, MI6. This is the party of Judas. And there's also this apparatus of the Helsinki Accords, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. This is something that comes out of the 1975 Helsinki Treaty. This has obviously been heavily, heavily penetrated by NATO intelligence so that the people there are at work. We've got stupid McCain shooting his yap off, right? John McCain popping off once again, saying to Putin, hey, Vlad, there's going to be a Russian spring. Well, unfortunately, this is the time of the year when the Nazis bogged down before Moscow, dear McCain. This maybe is not the right time to do the springtime offensive. Now, it's clear, therefore, this Saturday, the 10th of December, the CIA will make its maximum effort with the help of Adbusters, NED, the entire Western NATO intelligence cartel. The average Russian, I think, is not interested in having a weak puppet government installed. The average Russian remembers very well the IMF NATO puppet government. It was called Yeltsin, with Prime Minister Yegor Gaidar, with Anatoly Chubais, with all of these people who were privatizing. They were doing nomenclatura privatization. It was a government dominated in particular from 1996 on by these oligarchs. We had a new campaign this week in favor of Khodorkovsky. Khodorkovsky, the rich parasite who wanted to organize a coup d'etat, he wanted to sell the oil of Siberia to Chevron Oil at the expense of the blood and bones of the Russian people who had died to protect this stuff during World War II, because then the Nazis would have done pretty much the same thing. So now we're supposed to think that Khodorkovsky is cool, that he's a victim, that he's a human rights case. I'm sorry, he was organizing a coup d'etat, and he better stay in Siberia until he figures out that this is not the way to do it. I think the average Russian would say, look, we know what a puppet government looks like. That looks like Yeltsin. There we had essentially a Great Depression. We had a decline in Russia of production of about 30, 35, 40%. This is written up in some books that I collaborated on at the time. We don't want that again. So if it's Putin or chaos, again, it's an easy choice, isn't it? Putin, whatever the critiques may be, is better than chaos. There's also an international dimension to this we'll get to. Right now, the dispute going on with the United States is this question of the anti-ballistic missiles. And, Lavrov, the foreign minister, I think he's got a clearer view now than he did maybe a year ago. Lavrov now says there is no receptivity by NATO. There is no readiness to negotiate seriously on the question of the anti-ballistic missile system. So Russia is going to have to go ahead with their countermeasures. This could mean denouncing some of the last relics of the Cold War détente period, right? The New START treaty that was negotiated with his beatitude Obama, right? With the Messiah. This may go out the window within a week, and you will have these Russian short-range nuclear missile batteries put as far west as they can put them to shoot out the ABM batteries if it comes to that. Because this is a very serious issue. The issue involved here is a U.S. sneak attack first strike against the Russian Federation. This is the biggest deal there is in the world. This is World War III, by definition. We should go back to Foreign Affairs magazine, as I recall, in the spring of 2005. Two U.S. experts, and I will have this for you next time, looked up. The two U.S. experts wrote about the growing possibility, this is 6 years ago, of a U.S. first strike against Russia and or China. And I think that has not gone unnoticed. The point is that if the U.S. has a first strike capability, you might have a disorganized, fragmentary Russian retaliatory response, and the ABM systems would serve to diminish that. So it would reduce the price that the aggressor would pay. Therefore, these are linked. It's clear. They are linked. Russia is correct in saying so. What is the point of this? It's not directed, the ABM systems are not directed against Iran. They're not directed against rogue states. They are directed against Russia. This is pure insanity. Who wants to drive NATO all the way to the edge of Russia? How can the American people be committed to fight for the defense of the Baltic states, right? These faraway places, who, of course, get themselves into trouble with their abrasive, provocative policies that they insist on carrying out, right? Gratuitously insulting Russia. What is the point, right? What is the goal of this? This is done by demagogues in the countries who are imposing austerity and who are saying, well, I'll wag the dog a little bit. I'll get my popularity back by having a go at the Russians. Pure demagoguery. Why should the American people be committed to support that with their lives? Back in a minute on World Crisis Radio.